Okay. Take 4.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, oh Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna.
From the ethereal realm of devotion to the practicality of daily spiritual practice, across the vast landscape of Vedic wisdom and teachings, this is Vaishnava Voices. Hosted by the dynamic husband and wife duo, Srila Das and Dana Devi, they bring to you an intimate exploration of the vibrant world of Vaishnavism. Interweaving ancient scriptures with modern contexts, personal stories with universal lessons, they illuminate the path of love, devotion, and conscious living.
Hare Krishna, and welcome everyone to another episode of Vaishnava Voices. I'm your co-host, Srila Das, and beside me, as always, is the wonderful Dana Devi. Today, as with every episode, we're diving deep into the heart of Vaishnava teachings, exploring the wisdom, culture, and practices that guide us towards a life filled with devotion and service.
That's right, Siddharpati. We are thrilled to have you on this journey with us. Whether you are a seasoned devotee, a spiritual seeker, or simply curious about Vaishnavism, here in Vaishnava Voices, we are all about fostering connection, understanding, and growth. And remember, we are not just exploring, we are also experiencing. So let's begin.
So sit back, prepare your hearts and minds, and tune into the sounds of the soul on Vaishnava Voices.
Hare Krishna, and welcome, Dhanesvara Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Nice to be with you both today. Dana Devi, nice to see you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. And welcome to our viewers who are viewing live right now. Feel free to drop a comment. Let us know where you're watching from. At any point during today's stream, drop some questions in here for Dhanesvara Prabhu. Any comments that you want us to pull in, we'll bring them in. And if you're watching in the archives, or even if you're watching live, feel free to tag a friend or 10. Let them know about the good news of the Bhagavad-gita. And today we're going to be talking about, let me flip my camera so this is not back to front. MacBook webcam, and then transform, flip horizontally. There we go. Now it's round the right way. It's Dhanesvara Prabhu's book, one of many, Lessons in Spiritual Economics from the Bhagavad-gita, Part 1, Understanding and Solving the Economic Problem. That's our main topic today. By way of a bit of an introduction of Prabhu, Dhanesvara Das is a disciple of His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the author of a couple of books. There's this one here as well, Divine or Demoniac, Spiritual Movements and the Enemies Within, which is really one of the classics of conspirituality, which is a portmanteau of conspiracy theory and spirituality. Two great tastes that go great together. And it was by reading that book that we got into the first edition, Bhava.
Really? My book introduced you to Bhagavad-gita? Oh, the first edition.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Prior to that, of course, I was, I got a bunch of second edition copies.
Good. All right. Well, that's a good outcome.
But now we got
one of many.
Yeah, untold first editions kind of hanging around the desk now.
We have a collection of it.
Yes. Michael McNeish is listening from Auckland. Shout outs to Michael. Thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate your time and attention on this Sunday morning. It is here in New Zealand. And of course, it's Saturday evening where you are in an undisclosed location in the continental United States. Spiritual economics, Prabhu, how would you like to... Well, is there anything else that you would like the audience to know about you? Because you have a long and storied history, many different, fields that you touch on in your books, and then you have a lot of experience that relates to all of them. Is there any of your particular life experience, history that relates to today's talk that you'd like to highlight?
Sure. Some of my background, I do not have a degree in economics. Many people assume that I do. And the fact is, if I had a degree in economics, I would not have been able to write that book. Because I would have been indoctrinated into a different way of thinking. I have a master's degree in engineering from the University of Florida, 1973, and just after I graduated, or let's say I started reading Prabhupada's books during graduate school, and after I graduated, devotees came open the temple in town, and I immediately started going and knew that I wanted to give my life to Krishna and Christian consciousness. So beginning from there, throughout my ISKCON experience, I've done all of the different services. I've been temple president and so on. I was the production manager for the 10th, 11th, and 12th cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam with Gopi Pranadhana, Hridayananda, and others. And let's see, for the last, from about 2005 to 2015, I traveled all over Europe, Eastern Europe, particularly Russia, India. I spent 5 years in Ukraine, and I can tell you the actual history about that country and what's going on there now. And just traveling and preaching. And when I was in Ukraine, that's when I wrote Spiritual Economics, because I had the support necessary to be able to sit down and focus on writing. And so I owed a debt of gratitude to Niranjana Swami, the GBC there, who invited me there and also supported my work. Since that time, I've 2015, 2017, I started writing Divine or Demonic. And so most recently, I was down in New Zealand with you folks this past your summer, my winter. And now I'm back in the United States. The other essential thing to know about spiritual economics is there's no conspiracy here whatsoever. It's all factual. That's important to know. Now, generally, economics, there's a lot of skullduggery, a lot of obfuscation that goes on in that field, but we're not going to be dealing with the actual dollars and cents and the usual discussions that go on in the name of economics. Rather, we're going to talk about real economics, and the distinction will be apparent as we get going.
Great. Yeah, it's economics is one of those things. We had a class at school called economics, and they covered macroeconomics and microeconomics. And I don't know, I'm nearly 50 now. I consider myself to be a generally quite an intelligent person, but I'm like, what they call economics and what you read about in the newspaper, it's like it doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, I know they say words that make sense in sentences, but the concepts that they put together in the narrative in the newspaper, it's like, what are they even talking about? So I've done some kind
that's deliberate.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's deliberate because they deliberately obfuscate the message so that most people think, I can't understand that. Because if they did understand it, as Henry Ford said, it's a good thing people don't understand how, maybe I'm paraphrasing here, maybe I'm misquoting, but if they understood how things actually operate, there'd be a revolution before tomorrow morning. And the reality of the way economics is handled in this world, the reality is it's a tool used by the demonic specifically for the purpose of exploiting and controlling everyone without your even knowing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I saw a meme post from Andrew Tate this morning, and he was saying, if you have a $50 bill and you go to the hairdresser, get your hair cut, he takes the $50, goes, puts some gas in his car, gives it to that guy takes the $50 bill, buys his groceries, like that. After 20 or 30 transactions, there's still a $50 bill there. Whereas if you do that, with electronics, there's like a 1.5% ticket punch by the bank every time you do an electronic transaction. After 20 or 30 transactions, the $50 is gone. And now the bank has the whole thing.
Well, actually, when you're using the $50, it's gone also because every transaction tax is taken out, which is additional money that you people add to the transaction. So every time we use their money, we become poorer. It's specifically designed like that to transfer money from the poor to the rich, to the point
Mm.
where they have more money than they cannot conceivably even use. But it's demonic mentality. So much is mine today, and I will get more according to my schemes. They've got a grand scheme. They're extremely intelligent and extremely demonic.
Mm.
You said there was going to be no conspiracy, but there's just no denying that reality is a
That's not a
conspiracy.
conspiratorial statement. That's a fact.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a factual conspiracy, right? Like it's a hidden collaboration between parties to take advantage of other unwitting parties, basically
Okay,
a conspiracy.
like that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Even, with the money, like Andrew Tate's kind of giving people the kindergarten education there. They look at that and they go, yeah, we should use cash. But as you've just pointed out, the cash is being taxed. So people are having to pay tax on the $50 bill. So although the physical $50 bill is still there at the end of it, the value of the $50 bill has gone down, and we call that inflation.
And in
And
sales
people don't
tax,
know, where does inflation come from?
I don't know about there, but sales tax here is sometimes 6-7%, a lot more than the 1.5%. So
Sales tax here
6,
is
7%, the
15%,
whole
Prabhu.
$50 bill disappears after 10 transactions.
Yeah, it's 15% in this country.
Mm.
Really?
Sales tax. Yeah.
Oh, I don't
Welcome to
remember that.
communism.
Oh, the only thing
Yeah,
I
because
purchased there was groceries. So they
because
didn't
it's
tax
built into
groceries.
the price. No, they do, Prabhu. They don't disclose the tax amount. It's
Oh.
all monolithic. Every single price
Oh.
has it built in, and it's undisclosed,
Mm-hmm.
unlike the United States. Where I go
Again.
into the 7-Eleven, I buy all my stuff, and I'm like, it's $10, I got enough, and the guy rings it up in like 12.36, and I'm like, what? Because they're like, no, we added the government's tax on here, but at least you can see it there. Here you don't see it. You just suck it up.
Cheaters and the cheated, right?
The
Bhagavad-gita
cheaters and the cheated.
explains all of this. That's why I say lessons in spiritual economics from Bhagavad-gita.
Okay, well, I read Bhagavad-gita, Prabhu, and we actually do a class on it every day. I haven't read anything about that in there. How did I miss that?
Well, first thing you have to do is read my book. I don't know if you got that far yet, but spiritual economics, I mean. Read that, and then you'll be able to see Bhagavad Gita in a very different light, I guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
Because
So,
what we do is, because we're culturally conditioned, we read Bhagavad Gita in the context of our own culture rather than reading it in its context. And the result of that is we can't understand what's going on the page. So let me use that as a way of introducing this, the segue, or the genesis of the book. I remember very clearly in 1988, I was sitting on my porch, I was reading Bhagavad Gita. Now, by that time, I'd read Bhagavad Gita probably 15 times or more. But this particular day, I'm reading Bhagavad Gita, and I realize, oh, look at this. Krishna's speaking about economics. And I was quite surprised. And then as I really got that idea, I looked, and it's everywhere, not only throughout Bhagavad Gita, but throughout all of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Economics figures prominently in the entire bondage of the spiritual being in the material world. And it's also most essential to understand in the liberation of the jiva. It's not something that's, usually people think spiritual economics. What's that? It's an oxymoron, right? You got economics is over here and spirituality is over here. The two things, right? Never the twain shall meet. But no, economics figures integrally in our bondage in this material world. So shall we continue from there? Because what I want to do is I want to trace this understanding before we get into the book. I want to explain this idea of economics from Bhagavad-gita.
Yeah. Could we could you give a definition of economics?
Oh. Yeah, the production and distribution of goods and services.
Okay. Yeah, I was meditating on it this morning, thinking like how would I phrase it? Yeah, okay, that's really good. The other thing
Now,
I was thinking was like
that's
access to opportunity.
in the modern context, it's a little different because money is involved. Okay. Economic development. Okay. The basic word comes from the Greek word economos, which means household. How do we do our daily affairs? That's what economics means. Getting food, living, getting clothing, right? And maintaining, managing our material life. This is economics. However, in the modern context, we bring money into this, the whole affair. And money then is considered to be economics, and all of these other things are superfluous. But what money does, money forces us to get not to serve our own needs indirectly. We don't without money in a barter system or before money, people would serve their own needs directly. You need food, you would plant seeds in your garden and you would get food directly as a result of your own labor. When money comes, very few people grow their own food. They go to get money to get, they go to a job, right? They get a career first, right? They go to school to get a career, to get money, to get a job. So we're touching our nose like this in the money system rather than directly.
I can see that, but then at the same time, does that not mean that it's now possible for me, instead of giving my energy directly to growing food to be able to eat it, that I can, work on building, I don't know, a rocket or, a computer? Someone else does the food. So in other words, it kind of enables the, specialization and the expansion of a more complex economy, I guess you could say.
It does.
Like
It does indeed.
development.
It allows for an extremely specialized civilization. But for what purpose? Okay, the whole purpose of life is missed in that situation. Let me point out, money is created by the demonic elements of this world specifically to serve their purposes. Okay, money did not exist in terms of a medium for a exchange in a market economy until about 2,600 years ago. Prior to that, there was no money. So where did the money come from? The Greeks actually were the first ones. They coined money, and the first coins found in India, for example, are Greek coins dated about 300 BC. So the money is created by the demonic forces to allow them to amass more wealth than what they need, right? When we talk about getting rich, it means I want to accumulate wealth that's not going to be destroyed by time. If I keep my wealth in potatoes or apples or grain, right? Time and nature is going to ravage it. So, okay, we'll create this thing called money. And then with money, I can store my wealth. I can accumulate unlimited amounts of it. And then I can use it to control people. Now, you don't have to do that, but That's how the demonic use it, and most everybody else follows suit because we're indoctrinated in that way.
And it lends itself to that, really, also.
Yeah.
I want to just call back to something you said earlier. And it just slipped my brain. Oh, no, here it is. Yeah. That today, when we talk about economics, you can't talk about economics divorced from money. It's like an integral part of it, and it's a foregone conclusion. It's an assumption that money is, without money, what are you even talking about? Like, there's like earth, air, fire, water, ether, and then when you're talking about economics, there's like money and like debt instruments, right? And also like production and consumption. And it's a slipped premise, a snuck premise. Like, you can't get away from it. And part of the presentation of that is there were primitive things before, but that's, Stone Age stuff. And then this is actual advancement is once. And then when you follow that to its logical end, you end up in this like synthetic, debt instruments, being traded, derivatives, and you go into more and more speculative realms, like if money is good, then synthetic derivatives are even better. Like that's the line of reasoning.
There's immense downsides to money. Money is the root of all evil, not the love of money. No, money is the root of all evil. I've got a chapter in the book to that effect. I call it the economics of atheism, because immediately what does money imply? My money, right? I and mine. But who is the owner of everything? Come on, who's the owner of
Supreme
everything?
Lord.
Yes,
Yeah, Vishnu.
of course.
Krishna.
Right. We don't say Krishna's money, right? My money.
Mm-hmm.
So it's extremely subtle in how it undermines the spiritual culture. It is the root of all evil. We can get more into that later, but
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
I agree with that. Money makes a man dance like a monkey.
yeah, that's right.
Or money.
Whoever pays the piper calls the tune, right?
I guess there's a couple of things, and I'm interested to see how these get addressed in this exploration. One of them is, like people like, oh, vegans, and I'm like, show me the vegan civilization that triumphed in the world. It's all the meat eating, milk drinking, grain eating tribes that conquer the other ones. Can a non-money using organization or civilization defeat a money using one? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you try to create this, let's have a no money economy, is a moneyed economy going to come in and destroy that because it has an advantage in material expertise?
Okay, now to answer this question, understanding of Bhagavad-gita is absolutely essential because two things are required for this. We must understand the divine and demonic natures. We must understand particularly the demonic nature. So much is mine today, and I will get more according to my schemes. And one of the chapters in my book, Spiritual Economics, is about divine and demonic consciousness, in which I go into detail the nature of the demonic consciousness. And then the other thing that's essential to understand in answering that question is the gunas. Okay, the modes of material nature. Now, your question presupposes that everybody is equal. And when in modern discourse, when we talk about how we've done so many bad things, we're raping and destroying the world. No, it's not we, right? I mean, with that argument, we come to the conclusion human beings are bad. And they're teaching this to children in schools, that human beings are a scourge on the planet and human beings must be eliminated for the future of the planet. So they're teaching this to school children who think, I should commit suicide. And indeed, the suicide rate for children meaning mostly teenagers, is increasing. Of course, there's many reasons for that, but it's not humans are bad, right? Humans in Tamagun are bad. White men in Tamagun are bad, or demonic people of whatever skin color are bad. Okay. And this distinction is to be made between the divine and the demonic. Right? So Krishna says there's two kinds of people in this world. He gives their characteristics, their attributes, and the divine people are those who protect, right? They have sattva gun. They live in the element of sattva gun, which means protection, which means maintenance, right? Whereas the demonic, they have a tendency to live in the qualities of tamagun, which means destruction, exploitation, control, manipulation. So these lessons from Bhagavad-gita are essential to understand when we're addressing all, human activity of any kind, and particularly economic activity. And by the way, I'll take this minute to make a plug. I'm writing a small book right now on the gunas, again, because this is essential information for people to understand how this world is working. So can you state the question again then with that?
Sorry, just had to get to the mute button.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the question, it's a very pragmatic, Kshatriya kind of minded question about game theory and the advantage of a money, a civilization that doesn't use money versus one that does. Like in New Zealand, for example, when the English come over, they trade with some of the tribes, and the tribes that will, like, I don't know, sell some of their land to get muskets can now use those muskets to attack the other tribes. If the other tribes don't sell their land to get muskets, they're going to be annihilated. So it's kind of like muskets introduce this element, which is like, if you don't have them, you're done. And is money of the same nature? And is that why the world is conquered by money using races, if you will, or money using civilization?
Money, I say you could have a civilization that uses money, a civilization in sattva gun that uses money, but by its very nature, money encourages rajas. Okay, why? Because what's rajas? More, more, more. I will get more according to my schemes. So it's rajas and tamas. If you're in sattva, you don't require money. Okay, in the book, I explain economics according to the gunas. So we have the economics of goodness, the economics of passion, and the economics of ignorance. And excuse me 1 minute. We're not reading tonight. We're not reading tonight. No, I'm speaking here. Okay. So I explain economics according to the gunas: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Now, what's the economics of goodness? Sattva gun. If we go back and we look at the indigenous cultures around the world, everywhere around the world, what we're going to find, no money. What we're going to find is not even barter. What we find is a gift economy where everyone participates in giving their gift, whatever it may be, to others in various ways. And different cultures handled that in different ways. So that's sattva. Sattva, you don't require money. And because those people were sattvic, we inherited from them a pristine world. When we bring rajas into the picture, then let me put it like this, give you an example. If I'm growing potatoes for potatoes' sake, how many potatoes am I going to plant? Well, I've got a family of 5 people. I need maybe 300 pounds of potatoes for the year, assuming that we're going to lose some for rot and animals and so on. So I plant 300 pounds of potatoes. That's it. My work is limited to what my needs are. But if I'm planting potatoes for money, if I'm growing money and not potatoes, how many potatoes do I need?
Mhm.
Unlimited. There's like
Unlimited.
literally no limit.
As much as I can do, right? And what's that lead to? I want to exploit the earth to get the earth to give me more potatoes, right? As quickly as possible. Hence we get fertilizer. Hence we get pesticides, herbicides. We get GMO, right? It goes downhill because this desire for money, not only money, but money now, right? Money now. So everything becomes distorted when I bring money into the picture. By what? By Rajagun and Tamagun. So if we want to stay in, particularly for us as devotees at this period in time, if we want to create a culture in Sattvagun, aka Varnashram Dharma, how are we going to do that if we continue to use money? It's going to be a big challenge. And the big challenge is that we have to buy our way out of the system in order to get what we need for self-sufficiency. And it's like a tar baby. You know what a tar baby is?
Nope.
Back in the 19th century, it was a type of punishment. They would get a bunch of tar that they could get from the ground naturally. And tar is extremely sticky. It gets on you and you can't get it off. So they would put it on a stick, right? And they would, if somebody was convicted of a crime or something, right, they would stick this tar all over them. It's called a tar baby. You can't get it off. Whatever you touch, the tar is going to go. So money is like a tar baby, right? It pollutes everything. You can't get rid of it. Another way of saying it is like money is like fire. Okay, it's extremely useful if it's kept in its place. If it gets outside of its place, it's extremely destructive. And of course, there's unlimited examples of that.
Yeah, I can see it. We went to the movies the other night and we were watching the thing at the beginning where they have the ads, and there were these ads on there about getting a home and a home loan. And we're building a house right now, and we're doing it like super slowly because we're like, okay, what are the implications of like going into debt and taking a loan, and what does that actually do? And it's kind of like, as you say, the mode of goodness. It's poison in the beginning and nectar at the end, whereas the mode of passion is nectar in the beginning and poison at the end. And when I think of taking a loan from the bank, I'm like, I could go to the bank, I get this big loan, and then would immediately put this driveway in, and then do this and that and this and that, and I can see all the nectar up front. But I'm like, what's the poison at the end of that? What are the
30 years of slavery? 30 years of slavery, right?
And then on the other, and then at the same time, there's also like, even if in the system where we are now, and I get we're mixing like the pragmatics with the principles, but I think this is good to get it on the core and look at it. You get the land, but you still have to pay. It's impossible to get out of the system. Like you say, it's a tar baby. You got to pay like rates, and you got to, if you connect to any kind of utilities or anything, you still got to pay. So then you have to have some kind of monetary income. I can't see how you can get out of the system unless you like would collapse the entire Babylon system.
That's the design. It's specifically designed like that to make you a debt slave for your entire life. But what? Because it's in Rajagun and people get what they want now, right? I get all my goodies now, and then right? So the happiness is now, but then the suffering is later. Oh, I've got to pay all these bills. Oh, I'm shackled by debt. I'm a debt slave, right? How could I travel around the world for 10 years? I don't have a home, right? I'm a homeless man. I'm free from that obligation, free from that anchor that keeps me in one place. Now, of course, there's upsides and downsides to that. It's nice to have a home. Most people want to have a home, yes. But how we go about it, okay? How we go about it is another thing. Now, just remember that prior to the modern era, people lived in homes all throughout history. They've had homes, but they got a home without money somehow. How did that happen? Oh my gosh. Right? But they used natural materials and built a home with what was provided by God. There's a very interesting fellow on YouTube. Jai Chandal, I think his name. Jai Chandal, something like that. He did first he did a TED talk. Why did we work so hard? And he was he was speaking about. He was in Thailand. Are you with me?
Is his name Jai Madan?
No, Jai Chandal.
Okay.
Jai Chandal, Jandal. And is the most famous video is Why Do We Work So Hard? And he's talking about, I went to university and all I could afford to eat was one bowl of rice. And all my friends, they could only eat one bowl of rice. And then we graduated and they all bought homes. But he dropped out of university and we went back to Thailand, where his parents' land, and he just started building homes. So he was building one home after the other. It took him about a month to build a house. And his friends, they get shackled with debt for 30 years for their home. And he's got 3 or 4 of them. He says, my big problem now is which home I should sleep in tonight. So he's asking this question, why do we work so hard? Why? Because we're suckered into a money system that exploits us because what? We're conditioned, right? We're indoctrinated into that kind of culture, and we're conditioned that that's the way we have to live. And we enforce it on each other. So anyway, let's get back to Bhagavad-gita.
Just before you do that, I found the video. I'm going to post it into the comments for interested viewers.
Okay.
It's called Life is Easy. Why Do We Make It So Hard? By John
Exactly.
Jandai.
Jai
His name is.
Chandal.
He's from Thailand.
Yeah.
Here it is here.
And he's got,
So it's in the comments.
he's doing what Srila Prabhupada asked us to do. Very interesting. And you see as many videos on his channel where he's challenging. Why are you working for money? Don't work for money. Of course, we got this problem that we have to buy our way out of the system. So
when you say we have to buy our way out of the system, this is not so much just a theoretical conversation for me anymore. I mean, I've had many conversations like this, sit around, speculate about things. I mean, now it's like become like real. And it's like, when you say buy your way out of the system, like, what are you talking about here? Are you talking about buying some land freehold?
yeah, how are you going to get land? First of all, just land. Okay. Once you have land, you can do everything else from the land. But the first thing is to get the land. And the way the world is set up and controlled now by the demonic elements, specifically to force you to get money. Okay. Now, in spiritual economics, in the book, I trace out the history of going from the economics of Sattva Gun, the gift economy, through the present postmodern era. And how money was introduced and how the powers that be forced people off of the land to get them to go to the city to adopt the money system. It was not an easy task. It took 300 years to accomplish that in Europe. But the demonic the demonic elements, the powers that be, they kept at it. They kept passing laws. You've heard about perhaps the enclosure laws that they had in England, where they would not allow a person to own enough land so that they might support themselves independently of money economy. Okay. So they knew what they were doing. It did not happen by chance. And now we have the situation where a small minority of people own the majority of the land. And it's happening now in the United States with Bill Gates buying up all the land and so on. But for example, in UK, 0.33% of the population, namely the Queen, they own something like 60 or 70% of the land. In Brazil, 2/3, right? Brazil is an extremely large country. 2/3 of the arable land, it means agricultural land, is owned by 2 or 3% of the population. And it's the same thing in every other country of the world, right? The powers that be, the money powers, they get in, they buy up all the land to force people off of the land so that they will be dependent on wage work so that they can be exploited and controlled. It has not happened by chance. It's a very deliberate effort, and it's still going on. Particularly with CBDCs coming. They don't want people
CBDCs.
to be, they don't want people to be able to live independently, right? So
It's incredible, like the level of control that we're in now and have been conditioned to and accept as normal, compared to how people lived, 1,000 years ago, or 2,000, 3,000 years ago, where people just could roam the world and it didn't belong to anyone, and you could go pretty much anywhere you wanted within, unless you run into other large groups of people. Versus what we're in today, where you go, to the salt mines every day and then come back home and lock yourself into your cell. And then, we've become habituated to that. We consider that to be normal. Whereas, your North American plains roaming Indian with the bison freely roaming would consider us to be insane inmates in a concentration camp. And CBDCs are like another level beyond that. So it's kind of like, so much do I have today and so much more will I have tomorrow. It's obvious that this mentality has no limit in how much control that it wants to consolidate. Yeah.
Sure. How much did Hiranyakashipu want? All of
everything.
Running the 3 universes, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No
All
limit.
the things.
Yeah.
Why? Because they want to be God, right? Who's the owner of everything? God, Krishna, right? And they are envious. They want to be the owner of everything.
I'm still interested in this question. I think for me, this is kind of my principal concern in the inquiry, is the same thing that I would say to Marxists. They're at the university doing their thing on the campus. We go there at the beginning of the university year to pitch our Vedic club on campus or whatever, and we get into a conversation with them and they say, the world used to be a communist utopia. Then the capitalists came in and did XYZ. And they're like, now all we need to do is the workers, unite, and then we overthrow them, and then the world goes back to a utopia from the socialist state. And I just go, if the world was a utopia before and then it fell into this state, and you're saying we're going to take it back to the utopia, well, I say that it will just simply fall back into this state again, because how did that original fall from the utopian state happen? And wants to stop that from just happening again. They're like, we're going to get rid of all the police and the army. And I'm like, I'm just going to take over in that case and become the dictator and run the whole thing. Like, so in the same way with this, again, it's that same question. Is there, how do you, and when there's this moneyed system that exists, or even the idea of the moneyed system that can be used to corrupt people, it seems like the moneyed system and the consolidation and control system has an innate advantage over, over this non-moneyed economy, and that it can corrupt it. And definitely right now we are in these small, like trying to create small islands inside a moneyed system. So yeah, kind of what I'm looking for is like, what's the secret? How are we going to pull this off?
Again, we have to understand very thoroughly the gunas, the modes of material nature. Just a comment about Marxism and capitalism. There's no difference between the two. It's the same economically. Okay. What do they use? Cash. They both use cash. They both have a sense of ownership. The only difference is the details. Who's going to own everything? Okay. And who's going to control it? Either the state, which is ultimately people. There is no state, right? There's some few people at the top who are calling the shots. And in the capitalist system, there's some few people who are calling the shots who are called CEOs. It's the same system. It's just a different way of organizing the distribution. So it's the same thing. It's not nothing different.
You either call them the state or you call them VC companies, right? Like capital funds, right?
Yeah,
This is naming.
same thing. Same thing, right? Who has control? That's the question. Okay. Now, in the Vedic system, right, which is sattva gun, right, there is this push towards increasing ownership, increasing large countries, increasingly large what? Now they want to what? The one world government. They even speak openly about it, right? Countries are no longer called countries, they're called states. They don't use the word country anymore. It's, they just refer to countries as states because we're states in the one world government. So this is the demonic mentality. They want complete ownership, complete control. Okay. Now, how are you going to prevent that? You need strong men who are capable of using violence. That's how you do it, right? Who put the bad elements 6 feet under. And then they can act for the benefit of the people rather than exploiting the people. This requires sattva gun. This requires proper training and understanding. Okay. But more particularly, it requires a lot of sattva to be able to do this. Now, I have a channel on Telegram, No Money Gift Economy, and so the people ask the question, well, how are we going to be able to live like that? What if we, okay, let's do this. Look, because I give this example when I speak about spiritual economics. I've got a magic wand, right? Where's my magic wand? Here it is. I got a magic wand. I'm going to wave it around tonight when everybody goes to sleep, make all the money disappear. Okay. Then when tomorrow morning, when everybody gets up again, part of my magic is that they're going to go about their day as if nothing is different. They'll go to the store, they'll go do their work, they'll do everything that they normally do, except there won't be any money. Can everything continue like that? If I have such magic, it could. Okay. If I don't have such magic, how will it happen? People have to agree that they will do that. But unfortunately, I don't have that degree of control. Okay. So it's not impossible. The question is, what does it require of us to be able to have a gift economy. Again, formerly, all of the indigenous cultures all around the world, they practice a gift economy. Okay, why? Because they were living in sattva, right? They had a greater element of sattva than we have now. But with the advance of Kali Yuga, we're more rajas and more tamas, and now we're getting into extreme tamas. Then it goes, from a gift economy to an exchange economy to an economy of exploitation. That's what we're doing now. Exploiting. Who's going to exploit the other person? So it can be done, but it requires us as individuals, I mean, as in everybody, to grow spiritually to the point where they are free from rajas, so where they have it in their heart that they can give to others without getting something in exchange. Typically in the Vedic culture, who is that? The sannyasis or the brahmanas. They are giving depending on the Lord, and we see that the Lord protects them. Now, practically speaking, most people can't do that. Okay. Yeah, how are we going to get there from here? And for most people, it can't be done in one step. It's impossible. Even, let's say, if the idea is there and everybody were to take up the practice of bhakti yoga, chanting Hare Krishna, purifying their heart, it could be there. But the idea isn't present. Okay, so we see that most of the Vaishnavas in the world today, they participate in the dominant culture exactly as if they were. There's no difference. They are part of the dominant culture, the dominant exploitation money economy. Okay, the only difference is they go to a temple, and the other people go to the Baptist church. Okay, maybe they're vegetarian. Okay, they try to follow some regulative principles. But in terms of how they live, most Vaishnavas are living according to the ways of the demonic culture, because we haven't understood this fact about how to live our philosophy. Okay, now let's get to Bhagavad-gita with that. Generally, when I travel and I speak about spiritual economics, we get to Shloka 247 in Bhagavad-gita. Karmanya varikaraste ma paleshu kadachana ma karma palahitur ma te sangostva karmani. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of activity. Never be attached to not doing your duty. What is it? Never, what's the second part? You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you're not entitled to
not
the
entitled to the results.
Never
have a
consider
right
yourself. Never consider yourself
the
to be the
cause of the-
cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. Okay, so
Yes.
I say that sloka, and then I ask, all right, how many in the room have a job? And the hands go up. Okay, and I ask them, so why do you go to work? And generally, the response is, well, I have to feed my family, I have to pay the rent. And I said, well, no, that's not why you go to work. Why do you go to work? And finally, we get around to them admitting, I go to work because they pay me. Right?
Mhm.
Would you go to work if they didn't pay you? No, I have to go somewhere else to get paid. Okay, what is this pay called? This is called the results or fruits of your activity. But what does Krishna say here now? He said, the results of your activity do not belong to you.
Mhm.
Okay, then you start to see the light bulbs going off, and then We have a problem here, don't we? Right?
Do we though?
Why? Huh? We have a problem because the culture that we live in is antithetical to that instruction in the Bhagavad-gita. People work. Everybody's working for the fruits of their action. That's why they work, or why they do their
Well,
business.
That's why they think they work, but it's
No,
only
that's why they
mental.
work.
Well,
No,
that's why they think they
again.
work.
No. Why? Why do you go to that job? Again, the first answer is, well, I got to pay my rent, I've got to feed my family, and so on. I said, okay, that's your motivation for going there. Why do you go there?
Mhm.
Because they pay you. And if they didn't pay you, would you go? No, I'd have to go somewhere else where I'd get paid. So the money that you're working for, this is called the fruits of activity. The result of your activity is that paycheck. And Krishna says, well, hang on a minute. That doesn't belong to you. Okay? So there's a cultural clash here. And again, because of our indoctrination and conditioning by the dominant culture that we live in, most devotees haven't seen that. They don't understand that. And myself included, as I mentioned, I had read Bhagavad-gita probably 15 times or more. And then one day I'm reading that sloka and I'm going, hey, wait a minute. This is economics. Yeah, it's everywhere. Fruits of activity. This is what motivates everybody in this material world, however that is defined. Okay. Everybody works for a particular purpose, and that purpose is called the fruit of your activity, the results of your activity. And they do that because that's what they want. They're motivated materially because why? Because people want to exploit the material energy. That's what we're doing here.
Okay.
Now, Krishna
But
says you're not entitled to the results of your activity.
Okay, this is a little confusing to me because it sounds like what you're saying is that there's something intrinsically wrong with Arjuna performing his duty, whereas Krishna says to him, because Arjuna himself says, if you think that me going to work my job for money is bad, why are you telling me to do it? Because that's effectively what Krishna does. Krishna, first of all, points out exactly what you're saying, that Arjuna is attached. And in his case, it's manifesting as a desire to not do his duty. Like, I don't want to go to work because they're not going to pay me. And I only go because they pay me. And then Krishna tells him this and tells him to go to work. So it sounds like you're saying for people to not go to work.
So this is the beginning of chapter 3 of Bhagavad-gita.
That's where we're up to now.
Arjuna's asking Krishna, my intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. On one hand, you're telling me to do one thing, right? And why do you ask me to engage in this ghastly warfare if you think intelligence is better than fruitive work?
Boom. That's my question. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So the answer is here in chapter 3 of Bhagavad-gita. Okay. Okay. His duty. What's his duty? He's a warrior. He's a Kshatriya. He has to fight. That's his duty. And what's Krishna telling him to do? Do that without being concerned with victory or
victory or defeat.
Victory or defeat, loss, gain, happiness, and distress. Right? Don't be concerned about the outcome. You do your duty. That's what your duty is. Then later on in the second chapter of Bhagavad-gita, Arjuna is asking Krishna, what is the nature of a man who is situated in transcendence? And this is what Arjuna is confused about, because Krishna is telling Arjuna to go for the transcendental path. And Arjuna is taking that to mean that to work for the fruits of activity. Of course, even though he will have the fruits of activity, if he wins, he'll gain the kingdom. But that's not his motivation. right? If that motivation is there, karma is involved and one becomes implicated. Okay. Are we clear on that?
We are, but does this not take us to the place where devotees are today? Like, okay, Prabhu, you just proved that I, should just go and participate in the demon economic system and be unattached to the result.
No,
Isn't
the
that,
better
isn't
way to
that where
do
we
it.
land?
Krishna has given us a way to live in the world that allows us to serve our own purposes directly by living directly on the land. Okay. And we have, according to our nature, we have different activities that we're inclined to perform. So this is also in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad-gita later on. Krishna explaining, do work according to your nature, but don't be attached to the results. Okay. Let's look at some more of this from chapter 4. And we go from 247 to I'm sorry, chapter 247. And this is again where Arjuna becomes confused. Okay. So Krishna says, you have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you're not entitled to the fruits of action. Then immediately after that, Krishna says, abandon all attachment to success or failure. Keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service and work in that consciousness. Those who want the fruits of their work are misers. Why are they miser? Because they don't know the proper use of a thing. Miser means somebody who does not know the proper use of a thing. If you've got money, we usually think of a miser. He has money, but he won't spend it. But money is meant to be spent. So we have human life. Human life is not meant for fruitive work. If we do that, we're miserly, because human life is meant to get us out of this world by acting without attachment to result, according to our nature, surrendering the results to the Lord. Okay. And Krishna goes on and on. How many times we know Prabhupada says in the Vedas, if they want to emphasize something, they repeat it 3 times, right? Harinam, Harinam, Harinam eva kevalam, kalonya sevana sevana sevagattaranyata. Okay. How many times in Bhagavad Gita does Krishna say you're not entitled to the fruits of action?
I don't know. It's a great question.
24.
24.
24. Again and again and again, driving it home from different perspectives to get it through our thick skulls. And still, most of us don't understand that, because that's what we continue to do. Okay. And how do you avoid that? You get your land, you grow real fruits, right? Vegetables, and you survive with that. So ironically, the non-fruitive work is actually growing fruits, real fruits.
Yeah, that is complete truth, because the earth is giving you so many things, so many goods, and the only thing you need to do is planting and maintaining it.
Yeah.
And the earth is maintaining you full on without stop. And living out of the land is basically kind of freeing for everyone. Personally, I feel like it's freeing. Only requires time, some muscles there, and that's it.
It's sattvic, and it forces one to come to sattva gun, right? Because why? If you're going to live on the land, you have to do things in a timely fashion. You can't be lazy. You can't put it off till tomorrow, procrastinate. You have to act today, right? If you don't
Mhm.
plant in time, you're not going to harvest in time. Then you're going to starve. So you're forced by that way of life to come to Sattva Gun.
Mm.
And from Sattva, Shuddha Sattva is not that big a step. But from Rajas and Tamas of modern society to get to Shuddha Sattva, which is where most of our devotees are, not possible. Extremely difficult.
Mm.
You know, in creating this episode, Prabhu, I created the description for it. And here's what I said in there. I said, Srila Prabhupada is unique among modern proponents of the Gaudiya tradition in his revolutionary social, economic, and political program to support and protect the development of love of God. Dhanesvara Das has not stepped back from this revolutionary program in the face of the cultural counter-revolutionary conspiracy that manifests as cynicism, resignation, and sidelining of Srila Prabhupada's non-essential teachings. Rather, he has stepped into these instructions and dedicated his intelligence and energy to the search for understanding these instructions and the ways and means of fulfilling them. And that's kind of like Srila Prabhupada is reported as saying that this was the second half of his mission that was incomplete, was the establishment of Varnashram Dharma, the system for organizing the social, economic, and political structure of human society.
Mm.
Very well written. Thank you. Yeah, very well. Yeah, that's exactly what Prabhupada wanted us to do and why he wanted us to go there. Unfortunately, we have not yet understood that. And if you finish reading my Divine or Demoniac book now, you may know exactly my conclusion on that. Our movement was infiltrated specifically for the purpose of thwarting that, so that we would not create a back to the land movement that would be successful in counter to the status quo.
Mhm.
And that's actually an inescapable, inevitable conclusion of the whole thing. I was talking with a very dear friend of mine the other day about the Divine or Demoniac book, the number one Hare Krishna conspirituality tome. And, you know, I was saying, you know, it's got this thing in there, the book changes, it's got this other one, and then it's got the granddaddy of them all, Srila Prabhupada was poisoned. And I said, it would be an insult to Srila Prabhupada to say that he wasn't. Of course he was. He's the most dangerous man to everyone. I'm not saying that it could kill him, but of course they would try. Like, to say that they didn't is to say that he's like a nobody and not a threat or anything. Of course he is. He's
Exactly.
like Asura's enemy number one.
Mm.
I'm into it for that reason alone.
I point this out in my introductory lecture to Divine or Demonic. If you go on my YouTube channel and see the lecture that I gave, I think it's in Stockholm in
2020.
2019.
2019. Just before the
No,
pandemic.
yeah,
I think it's in
2019,
Denmark, isn't it?
September. Did you see it?
Copenhagen.
Yeah,
I think
Copenhagen.
it's in Copenhagen.
Right. Yeah, and there I cite one professor from St. Petersburg Agricultural State University. He was giving a lecture to the KGB, and he was identifying the most powerful weapons in the world, and starting from number 10 all the way down to number 1. Number 10 was kinetic weapons that they're using for conventional warfare. And then he goes through the list, right? There's history, there's money, yada, yada, yada. And the most powerful weapon, worldview. And I point out in that lecture that Srila Prabhupada, he was giving us an alternative. He was teaching us probably 5 or 6 of those powerful weapons. And that's why he had to be stopped. He was giving everybody a different worldview. He was giving us a different economic system. He was giving us a different ideology in terms of religion, in terms of understanding our purpose in life. These are things that the demons use to control the world. They're powerful tools. They indoctrinate us all as children in schools with the Big Bang Theory. You're the body. You evolved from nothing. This is as good as it gets. Enjoy now. There's nothing
Here's a
more to life
video
than this.
going 200 million years back in time through every second through galaxies. You know, they showed that the other day. I was like, it's a CGI cartoon.
So Prabhupada was upsetting all of those plans. He overthrew all of them. He was the greatest threat to them.
Mhm.
And we didn't understand it. But our, those who are more intelligent, they understood. They understood the threat that Srila Prabhupada in his mission posed. And it still does. It still does.
Yeah, it's fundamentally like deeply revolutionary. It attacks the fundamental principles and the organizing narratives that are used. And the Asuras, they're like, God is not real, but belief in God is real, and belief in God is a mechanism for manipulating the masses. And this guy has got this belief in God thing on lock, and he's like recruiting like crazy, and they're going nuts. Like, this is deeply threatening to the socioeconomic system that we have in place.
Yep.
Yeah. Because if Srila Prabhupada didn't teach all of these basic things, which are very, very basic, right? Live out of the land, work there. You don't have to go and be a slave to somebody else. And guess what? You earn your money, you're taxated. You pay for your vegetable or anything, you taxated. You save money, you're taxated. Taxated from one thing and taxating another and another, to the point you don't have any money. And it's still going ahead with that and think, oh, the economy is great. Like, no, it's not great. You just dumb that you don't understand that. And Srila Prabhupada is saying, go to the land, work. Family is another pillar, and go protect your wife, protect your children. They can be working in the land. You guys be the exchange, like the Incas. The Incas was this one. The understanding of the Incas were groups coming together. What do you need? I need this one. All the group, this community gets together, go there and help with the planting and everything. And then the other people say, what do you need? And all the community go there and help. And there is exchange of things. And
no money.
Understanding the astronomy, astrology, everything, the position of the star, the harvesting time, everything they understood, but everything they worked together.
And then they give 25% of their grains to the temple for an offering, and then those get put into a granary, and then the Inca would redistribute them in times of famine if they needed it in different areas in the kingdom.
Yeah. The Incas are one of the examples I give in the Economics of Goodness.
And then, of course, the Spaniards come, and then they see these people, like, they go into their house or whatever, and the cups are made out of gold, and they got like a life-size thing of corn made out of like solid gold, and they just go nuts, and then rip the whole thing to pieces, start murdering people, exporting all that gold back to Europe.
So, again, it's not man that is bad, it's man in Rajagun and Tamagun.
Yeah.
But the thing about that is it looks like man in Rajagun and Tamagun is capable of conquering man in Sattvagun, which is how we end up where we are today, where all the Sattvic civilizations have been vanquished.
That's the destiny of Kali Yuga. Right?
Okay.
We're in Kali Yuga. Things had to go that way, because in Kali Yuga, this earth is given to the fallen people to try to fulfill their desires. And that's what's going on now. So many fallen people of every description, right, who have the chance to be who they are and flaunt it in your face.
Okay. So in that case, if it's historical inevitability, then it's like the resignation and cynicism about, well, how are you going to do this? How are you ever going to pull this off? Like, if you look at it and do just the calculus, it actually is impossible to reverse this out of a moneyed system, like when you're in it, unless the demigods come to the party and collapse the external system, in which case, it's like you get to impose something on the chaos that comes after that.
Well, that's what we see going on now. Ironically, the demons are dismantling their own civilization. I mean, it boggles my mind. Right? Okay, no, we're going to stop using fossil fuel. This whole civilization runs on fossil fuel. and they're going to stop using it. They got some other idea in mind, but all I can see is Krishna's pulling the wool over their eyes, and they don't have, they're undoing their own civilization to create what?
Mhm.
To create a fertile field for the coming spiritual culture.
It's demigods pretending to be demons, pretending to be aliens, pretending to be humans who are doing it.
Now you're getting conspiratorial.
All the way down to the bottom.
It's
Conspiracies.
your conspirituality.
Yeah, exactly. All the way down to the bottom. Hey, here's a question from the audience. Are you open to taking a question from the viewers?
Sure.
Okay, this is from Stoker Krishna G, one of our loyal viewers. Stoker Krishna, Sergei Levikin. He says, so this is about Srila Prabhupada being poisoned, the heretical doctrine which you're not allowed to adhere to. But he says, so who in his entourage would have tried to poison Srila Prabhupada? Who wanted him dead?
Let's not go too far into this. Please read the book. And if you want to get all the details, read the books that are being put up by my godbrother Nityananda Prabhu. Obviously, the only people that could do this are those who were closest to him, and the main culprit was Tamal Krishna Goswami. He was controlling everything, and those who knew him, knew that he was capable of this. If one wants to solve a crime, one has to approach it as if it did happen, and then look for
Just
the clues.
hypothetically, right?
Right.
Like in the beginning of the Bhagavad-gita, Srila Prabhupada says one should theoretically accept Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead and see where that takes you, right? So this is a thought experiment.
So that supposition has to be there. Then you look for the evidence to support it. Now, what I presented in Divine or Demonic is the circumstantial evidence. There's no direct evidence by which one could be convicted in a court of law. You won't be able to put that, to get that conviction. But there's a great deal of circumstantial evidence and some direct evidence in that Srila Prabhupada himself said several times that he was being poisoned. Now, if you want to accept that everything that Prabhupada said is factual, there's a statement for you. Don't dismiss that one. Okay? Now, I prefer not to go into this. This is a deep rabbit hole, and there's a lot of cognitive dissonance that comes up with this. Okay? My point here is like this. Let's consider this. Why did this not come up until 20 years, almost exactly 20 years after Srila Prabhupada had departed? And the reason is that we saw a lot of the mayhem and
Mismanagement,
chaos,
missteps.
mayhem created by the so-called leaders. Okay. Now, we initially would write this off as, okay, we're fallible, we're not experienced, we do stupid things, we make mistakes. Okay, all right, that's okay, and I did that too. Okay, but then when you get 20 years later and you start to hear the whispers that Srila Prabhupada was poisoned, and you can hear it, right? Did you put the poison in the milk? And then you understand that these same people who did this are still in control of the society. Then you have to connect the dots if you have a brain. Okay, that this did not happen by chance, and none of it happened by chance. There's a lot of deliberate actions to destroy the mission of Srila Prabhupada. For that purpose, right? So that we would not create a movement to get people off the land and give them a spiritual culture. Okay. Please read the book for the details. Read the entire book from page 1 all the way to the last page.
Which book is that? The Divine or Demoniac one?
Specifically that one I'm talking about now, but both of them actually.
All of them, and the new
All
one
of
about the
them.
Gunas coming out soon.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
only proper
Yeah.
way to read a book.
Mm, mm. Yeah, that when you say you have to connect the dots, it is so obvious. There is so many red flags there that is bright that people need to put attention here. Obviously, there are some people that are in denial. They cannot understand the reason why things are going downhill because something is not right there. Now, Srila Prabhupada, for sure, he was saying, I'm getting poisoned, someone is poisoning me here. And nobody just that anything. So there is a group of people that is maintaining the secrets, the dirty secrets. And also there is rumors now that certain Swamis are this part of the CIA. Everything they're keeping in secret, obviously, and now the question, and then I question myself, all of these young devotees, so much enthusiastic about the devotional service. They're selling books, and I don't know how many times the second edition has been edited with changing the Bhagavad-gita. They're selling. There's a lot of money there is being collected. Where is that money? Where is the land? Who has the money? Where can we see all of the income that is coming and where the expenditure is going? There is nothing of that. There is so many devotees that have been going to the ashrams. They've been, working really hard from morning to night. They don't get paid for that. They're giving all free labor. And where is the money? There is nothing there that is very transparent here. And there is a group of lump of people or swamis, I'm going to put into bracket, they're in super control of this. And if people only start questioning, it's like, hey, where is the money? We made this much money. Where is it going? How is it spending?
It really is beyond the capability of many people to be able to connect these dots. There's a segment of society called of the Sudra nature. Not to denigrate Sudras. Sudras are absolutely essential in all cultures, but the characteristic of them is they do not have the discriminating intelligence of the Dvija class, the higher three classes, and consequently, they, in Vedic culture, they simply do what they're asked to do. The Dvijas who have the discriminating intelligence, they can understand cause and effect and so on like that. And they're the ones who are supposed to figure out where the problems are and how to solve them. So anyway, many, in fact, I'd say at least half of the devotees will never be able to understand how that all happened, or they'll have cognitive dissonance and will never be able to accept it. That's okay. Okay. On the other hand, there are many devotees. There are other devotees who do understand it. In fact, there's several who have read my book. They said this book must be read by every new devotee, so that they can understand the world that we're living in. Okay, enough of that. We'll do another show about divine or demonic. Let's come back to spiritual economics. Hey, you're muted, Sidapati. You're still muted. Okay.
Just before we go to that, Prabhu, I got you with the quote here. It's Srimad Bhagavatam 6:2-5-6. It says, people in general are not very advanced in knowledge by which to discriminate between religion and irreligion. The innocent, unenlightened citizen is like an ignorant animal, sleeping in peace with its head on the lap of its master, faithfully believing in the master's protection. If a leader is actually kind-hearted and deserves to be the object of a living entity's faith, how can he punish or kill a foolish person who has fully surrendered in good faith and friendship? Easy. He's a demon.
Yeah. Or he's of the same quality himself. There's many, right, in our current society. We don't have Varna, which is a great tragedy. And many of the so-called leaders, right, are not those are not qualified individuals to be able to give such to use such discriminating intelligence to sort this all out. So and we saw that with the vaccines and many other issues, books, Bhagavad-gita. There's so many examples of that. Either that or those leaders are the infiltrators themselves who were purposely misleading people. Either way. Okay,
Yeah.
back to spiritual economics.
Well, I think we can link these two together because we have a question, a
Okay.
follow-up question from Stoker Krishna. But I just wanted to say before we go there, never ascribe to massive incompetence that which can be described by an epic conspiracy involving the demons, because that's way more entertaining. And these are all like conceptual, because I mean, none of this is real. We actually have no way of even knowing if we were here 10 minutes ago. We experience being here right now and we have memories, but like everything else is just, there is no objective history, right? There's only subjective perceptions of things, which form our motivations for our characters right in this moment. So, Stoker Krishna asked, well, who would have done it? It's like demons. That's who would have done it. I mean, that's all you need to know about that, for that story.
Yeah, there's a chapter in my book, The Infiltration of ISKCON. Please read that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
After
so
you've read all the things that became before it.
Yeah, don't skip ahead. So to link these two things together. So Stoker Krishna Prabhu says, playing the devil's advocate, can we really say that the movement is going downhill if the congregation around the world is growing, many people are taking to Krishna consciousness, new temples and preaching centers are opening, and the Mayapur temple is being constructed? I'll just preface this by saying, of course we can, because the spiritual economic basis of this thing is not being established, which is the missing piece. And could you elaborate on that aspect of it?
Sure. I would. My first comment would be, how big is the Roman Church? How many followers does the Roman Church have?
Mm-hmm.
About 1 billion. Okay, the numbers, they've got a lot of money. They've got beautiful, right? You go to the Vatican, it's gorgeous. Many beautiful temples and cathedrals all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have spiritual potency?
Well, I guess it depends on what.
Some, okay, some. I don't take that too far. Okay, everybody progresses from where they're at in this life. So the arrangement is made for some people to have that religion so that they can make further progress. My point is, if you read Divine or Demonic from the beginning, I point out from first century historical documents, the Nag Hammadi texts and Dead Sea Scrolls, that Jesus was a Vaishnava like us, exactly like us. Now, if that's a fact, then what happened? Because what passes for Christianity doesn't look anything like Vaishnavism, does it? Okay. Now, there's another chapter in that book called What is ISKCON? Well, there's two chapters. What is a devotee, first of all, followed by the chapter, What is ISKCON? What is a devotee? Is it a matter of form, the dress, the tilak? I got tilak, I got a shaved head, I've got saffron, I carry a stick. Is that a devotee? Woman wears a sari, she has a bindi on the forehead. Is she a Vaishnava? That's not the criteria. This is form. Okay. What's the substance? Those who have the substance generally don't give a fig about the form. Who has the substance? Some little cowherd girls in this village of Vrindavan. They don't have any position, any title, any following, right? Haridas Thakur, what did he have? Nothing, right? There's many, many, many examples of those who have substance and not the form. In the same way, the institution can have either the form or the substance. In the early days, ISKCON was Srila Prabhupada because that's all there was. Okay. And those devotees who came in those early days understood the substance because that's all there was. Later, when form developed, when we have big temples all over the world and people come, many people come, what are they attracted to? The form or the substance?
Hmm.
Could be either one. Okay. But many are attracted simply by the form. And that being the case, it's very difficult for them to understand the substance because they become bewildered by the form, meaning the leaders, the form, the GBC, the hierarchy, how everything is supposed to work. That's what they think ISKCON is.
Mm.
The details are in my book. Please read carefully from page 1.
Where can people get the book from? From Amazon.com?
Amazon, yes.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay, great. You know, the early, when I joined the movement, my experience of it early on reminded me of reading the epistles of Paul to the various churches, because they had things like, the kinds of controversies, early church controversies, were about women serving out prasadam. Like, so the believers all live together in one place and they all eat together. And it looks like early ISKCON kind of thing. It's like, they're writing a letter to Prabhupada to say, hey, can the Matajis serve out? Not that I would ever use that term myself to describe women. Mata for sure, mother, but Matajis has become like a shorthand. But they say, can the Matajis serve out prasadam, in the temple? Kind of early ISKCON controversies. And that early church, early Christian church, early ISKCON, now it's turned into something more like the Roman Catholic Church, and it's kind of transforming more and more in that way. Here's your Vatican II ISKCON law book. We've now released a new doctrine about the Jiva, or about the Guru Tattva, and now, according to this one subparagraph, the banned heresy of the.
And we also have dogma. We have dogma, the fall of the Jiva.
Mhm.
You have to believe it.
Mm.
You have to accept it. You can't say anything else.
Exactly. Yeah. And you have to obey what he said, because he's saintly. Otherwise, you're going to go to the hellish planets. Oh, people freaked out about it. Like, now, the thing about this question, Sergey Letkin, the movement is growing and all of that. And it's kind of like you're making the comparison about the Catholic church, and there's so many opulent churches there, hardly anyone inside. There is no joy, there is no life. People are just carrying on with their daily life of killing animals, illicit sex, and so many things. And it appears that, like also you mentioned about the how the money has been introduced, and over 300 years or so, how it had been advancing and advancing and advancing to the total control of people. And now we are just, we're getting so much controlled. It is, when we say it's going downhill, is basically is that it is all about time, and everything little by little is getting changed to the point like you just basically boxed in. There is you basically control, and we're going to become another Hare Krishna, like the Catholics. We're just
That's
doing
right.
anything that we want to. We can just, with the sense of like, oh, you are free soul, you can do anything that you like, and God love you the way you are, and killing, abusing, and raping children, and having some extramarital relationships. It's just like, oh, you go to the church, just go on your knees and say, forgive me, God, for what I done, and everything is sorted. And you go out of the church and then back to where you were before. And there is no transformation. There is nothing what Srila Prabhupada constructed. That's where we're going right now.
Yeah. Let me give you a history lesson. For the long ago, prior to 2,000 years ago, people were controlled by the sword. That was how everything worked. And you take from Rome. So beginning with the Roman Empire. But Pope, no, is it Emperor Constantine? His mother-in-law saw that all these Christians, they'd rather die than give up their faith. So he put a bug in his ear. Why don't we start controlling people with what they believe instead of with the sword? So he thought that was a good idea. So he made an offer to Pope Sylvester of the Roman Church. He said, I'll make Christianity the religion of the entire Roman Empire on two conditions. Okay. One, that, Christian, what are these? The Pope is both the temporal and spiritual leader. And two, I get to name the next Pope. Sylvester thought that was a good deal. We're going to spread the religion everywhere. Everybody's going to have to take it. So Sylvester agreed, and then everybody in the Roman Empire either had to lose their head or say, yeah, I'm a Catholic. I'll get baptized. Very easy, very, very persuasive argument. So for the next 1,000 years or so, 1,400 years, they controlled people by belief. This is the same thing that the Muslims did also, controlling people by belief, right? If you control their worldview, you can control them. That's the most powerful weapon. But then they got a better idea. Our control isn't complete. Let's develop this thing called money and control people with money. So they thought about that and they said, yeah. So this is why they allowed Luther to put his 95 Theses on the door of the church without killing him, because, okay, he's becoming our agent to help us undo the church, the control of the church. Let them take Protestantism. Fine. We don't have a problem with that. Why? Because we're going to control them with money. Right? And so we've been controlled with money ever since. And they want to tighten that noose further with CBDCs. So it's all about control. The whole Roman Church was about control. Jesus and his followers, they numbered in the tens of thousands in Palestine, in first century Palestine. And they were a problem for the Romans because they would not submit. There was always skirmishes, struggles going on. And Jesus, as their leader, posed a threat. So they had to get rid of Jesus, which they did. And then Paul, or his brother James, became the head of the church. And James continued. So finally, the Romans, they had enough. They decided, okay, we're going to put an end to this. So they decided they're going to eliminate all of the followers of Jesus. And it took them 7 years, right? The full Roman army, 7 years. That means it was a major war. So they eliminated them. They killed everyone that they could find. They destroyed all of their teachings that they could find. And they created another religion in the name of Jesus, which was done by the infiltrator of the name Paul. So, and then with that infiltration, they created a religion in Jesus' name that was subservient to the state. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Okay, are we going to talk about that book, or are we going to go back to spiritual economics?
We're going to go back to spiritual economics.
There we go.
I just want to make 2 comments on that. First of all, they managed to kill all the early followers there. I believe the final battle was at Masada. I have that part right.
That's correct.
Anyway, now we're back. Round 2, biznatches. And then my second comment is this. You know, your theory that you gave there about the Romans, the control through the church, then Luther, the control through the money. It sounds like a far out paranoid conspiracy theory, you know, conspiratorial theory of history. And the thing is that it's perfectly consistent with the description of the demonic mentality. So much do I have today, and so much more will I have in the future by my schemes. And so, therefore, we have to accept that as a view of history because it's consistent with the Shastra. To say that there's no one in control, no one's doing this, that's actually the speaking of the Asuric person, in according to Bhagavad-gita. And then the other thing is, as far as the poisoning or the assassination of these revolutionary spiritual personalities who come, that's also found in the 16th chapter in the speaking of the Asuric person, to your point, Stoker Krishna, who did it. And that is, he is my enemy and I've killed him. And, you know, now I'll give some charity and rejoice. Yeah, so I just want to say that it's a conspiracy theory and it's consistent with the Shastra, so therefore it should be favored over an accidental, you know, theory of history where there's no one in control, which is the atheist view of the world.
I'd like to take credit for that thesis, but it's not mine. There's others that have stated it, and if anybody studies history, you cannot come to any other conclusion. I'm sorry. It's not a conspiracy and it's not a theory. That's simply historical fact. That's the way the world has been controlled.
Yeah. We can give examples. For example, in Peru, the Incas were more connected to the demigods. Now, according to the Vedic culture, we know demigods.
Is that where you're from, Donna?
Yes, I am.
Oh,
and
I want to talk to you more about that.
Okay. And then the Spanish people came. Not only first the English people came, and German people, whatever was happening then, they came. And also the Spanish people came. But the Spanish were nastier because they used Catholicism, their religion, to control it. And they killed the Incas because the Incas, we believe in the sun god, we believe in Mother Earth, we believe in the air, we believe in the water, which is our mother. We believe all of that. And we respected it, we honor it, and we did give our what do you call this one? Offerings to them. And these people came and says, no. You're insane. You have to believe what the Bible, you have to believe the cross. This is God. And, if you don't believe, you kill. And that's exactly what they did. Rape women, they kill children, they kill women, and men that were protecting their women and the fighters, they separated the two groups to make them enemy, just to kill them. And guess what? At the end, the group that was favoring to the Spanish people, they get basically raping everywhere. Like
the same history is repeated all over the world.
Exactly. We have if we go back to in a European, Napoleon and India, all of that is the same mentality. So what about this? People doesn't get about the history. It is obvious on the face right there. The pattern follows and follows and follows. They use the same mentality. Come on, guys.
But no, we're living in a special age which is outside history, and it looks more like a children's cartoon, right?
And then they call it, and then they call it conspiratory, whatever conspiracy. Like, it's not conspiratory. It's just like, even when you drink water, is that conspiratory? Do you know what you're drinking? Do you know what is in your water? Is it a conspiratory? Whether you just investigate about it. It's a common sense situation.
Okay, back to the spiritual economics.
Yes,
conspiracy it's a rabbit hole with no bottom, and it's nectar. But let's go back to spiritual economics.
Okay, well, let's do another show on that book, and we can go down all those rabbit holes.
Okay, 100%.
Love it.
But you have to read the book first. Only after you've read the book.
I'm nearly finished. I'm still 2/3 of the way through.
What about spiritually? Oh, yeah, that's right. You're doing that one first. Then you have to read spiritual economics.
Yeah.
We should crank it up.
Yeah, I'll go back to this one.
Donna, have you read it? Are you reading it also?
I was reading with him, yes. But
Okay.
we trying our best to read many books.
Yeah, so many books. We're
Yeah,
reading
I'm sure.
Tranakata's Oh Hare Krishna Airport at the moment. And Shamasundar's Chasing Rhinos with the Swami.
Well, see, I should have forced. I should have said, you want to have me on your show for this? You have to read the book first.
Read the
That's
book
generally
first, yeah.
anyway.
The other way to do it would be to make it into a military science fiction book. I'd crank that thing out in a couple of days.
He likes the
Yeah.
intensity.
Well, you've got a
Yeah.
Kshatriya nature. That's sure.
Mm.
I'm sure that would interest you.
Mm.
Okay, so
There's a
the
question
question, the big question is, where are we
Precisely.
going from here? Okay,
here. Okay.
Mhm.
if we understand this thesis of spiritual economics, if we understand Krishna's instructions in Bhagavad-gita not to be attached to the fruits of your action, okay, and we are going to develop a spiritual culture in this world in the future, then how do we get there from here? Because say this demonic civilization is going to collapse one way or the other, or through World War III, and then what? It's going to be small pockets of people who pull together in their little area of the world for mutual support to be able to survive. Because, without, if everything's all of a sudden changed, survival is going to be numero uno. There's a very good book for anyone interested in this question. There's a wonderful book that I would like you to read by Peter Kropotkin, Russian aristocrat, wrote many wonderful books, a very deep thinker, and he was basically like a sannyasi, the way he lived his life. Although he was a Kshatriya, he had an estate. He later in his life took sannyas, basically left home, and like that. Anyway, his book Mutual Aid, which was written as a counter thesis to Darwin's Survival of the Fittest, and he was the thesis of his book is that everywhere we look in nature, we don't see competition, rather we see cooperation among different members of the same species, and cooperations even interspecies. And he traces out the history of human cooperation from the fall of the Roman Empire, which is a very interesting it's very analogous to what our situation will be. And he explains there how people came together in small groups and they helped each other to survive. There was no money, there's nothing like that. They simply gave to each other, assisted each other, helped each other. And the only thing that became a problem was when somebody would come along who would claim some sort of nobility, try to organize them, try to build a small empire, and then exploit them. And that was repeated again and again. Anyway, it's a wonderful book for those who are thinking about how are we going to introduce how are we going to introduce Vedic culture in the future? Particularly, okay, Varnashram Dharma. Okay, let's call it like that. My chair slumped. I have to raise it up again.
Interestingly, it's available in the anarchistlibrary.org. It was published in 1902, and it's a number of essays that were written from the late 1890s.
Yeah.
Collection of
Yeah.
essays.
The anarchists, they really love Kropotkin.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Add that to the reading list. Well, yeah, Stoker Krishna has asked this question. I don't know if you could work this into the spiritual economics angle, or we can checkpoint it for our eventual conspirituality focused episode. But his question is, how can we bring ISKCONs back to Prabhupada? What are we doing that we should not be doing? What are we not doing that we should be doing? Do you want to tackle this one from the spiritual economics perspective, or will we rain check it? What would you like to do?
I don't know how to do that from the spiritual economics perspective. There are devotees who have read my book. One of them in particular thinks that every new devotee should read it, who are engaged in creating a parallel ISKCON, as I recommended at the end of my book. Don't waste your energy fighting against the GBC. It's a waste of time. We've seen for 50 years that they're incorrigible. They will not be corrected. So what do? We follow Srila Prabhupada. We just start over, right? Start the Hare Krishna movement again. And there are devotees who are working in that way, along with my guidance. Right now, it's still a fairly small group, but there are younger devotees. They're probably in their 40s. And they understand the situation as it is. And my personal opinion is that we're not going to have the Hare Krishna movement that we had in its heyday in the 60s and 70s, or even 80s or 90s. Those days are gone. Because why? Because the world is changing, and a different aspect is needed. Now, there was Kuladri Prabhu, my god brother, who is president of New Vrindavan. He went to see Srila Prabhupada in his last days, and Prabhupada told him, the second half of our movement will be very different from the first half. He said, in the first half, all these emergency measures that I took to open temples around the world, to print and distribute books and make devotees, he said, that part is over. He said, the second part of our movement, these farms will become very important, where we learn how to put into practice the philosophy that I have given in my purports. So I believe we're at the transition now from the first part to the second part. And again, because the circumstances of the world are forcing that, we can still have some of the original days. There's devotees in Atlanta, Georgia, followers of Bhaktivikas Swami. They started a group called Krishna Life. Wonderful. They've got a big, beautiful temple. I was up there a few weeks ago to visit them. They're focused on distributing books, doing Harinam, and making devotees. Imagine that. It still works. Okay. So that can still be applied. But there's devotees doing that also in New York City. A lot of Harinam going on in New York City right now. But the external circumstances are changing, and my conviction is that we should prepare, not everybody, but those who are inclined, like you, Sitapati Prabhu, because you have a Kshatriya nature, prepare for this eventuality of a changed world and leading people to understand how are we going to live without modern society. Now, I really like New Zealand when I was there, because you've got the Maori culture, and they're such an interesting group, and I think there could be a lot of cooperation with them. They have somewhat of a Kshatriya nature, as much as I was able to learn. So I think there's I think there's a very good opportunity in New Zealand to create a model for that, and that I'd suggest that you develop a relationship with the Maoris and talk to them, teach them about Varnashram culture, and see if you can convince them, particularly about the validity. They're not too far off from it, from the little bit that I understand, but I don't understand very much.
Ka pai,
Mhm.
which is Te Reo Māori for sadhu. We started translating the Bhagavad-gita as it is into Te Reo Māori.
Oh,
And yeah,
wonderful.
in our daily class now, so we do the Bhagavad-gita, Sanskrit, we compare the first and second edition, and then the last part of the class is going through the Te Reo Māori translation to see what kind of insights that gives into that worldview, because a language is a theory,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it reveals the world in particular ways and conceals it in other ways. Yeah, it's interesting that the
Do you speak Maori?
I need.
Do you do that?
Well,
You
I'm
you
learning.
speak Maori? Okay.
I'm learning it, and I need to get these translations checked by a fluent native speaker, because things like it translated the self, the term the self. It translated it as whaiaro, which means like the follower of the heart, literally following the heart.
That's a very interesting translation.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
then
ultimately, we think of it in terms of a spiritual being, the self, as separate from the body, and I think that distinction would be important to be made.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, of course, the heart there is like probably more like chitta, like the internal heart, and like, yeah, not like the literal organ of the heart. Like the word in Maori, Te Reo Māori for love is aroha. Aro means heart, and then in Hawaii it's aloha, aroha here, or in Samoa it's alofa.
Uh-huh.
So they're all a spectrum of the same language across Polynesia.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting.
The question here that when you were talking about, we need to start, the situation's changing, we need to start doing this back to life or back to the
Back to
earth,
the land.
back to the land. So how, if we do that, obviously there are many communities around the world trying their best to do that. How do we become more prepared to not have that infiltration? Because these people that are manipulating now the ISKCON, obviously they like to infiltrate in everything that is going successful. So how do we become protected or
And then on the flip side, how to not be hyper paranoid. Like, I mean, I wake up every morning and distinguish the ways in which I've become controlled opposition, but then some people are like denounce me as being like an agent of the Illuminati, So on the one hand, I've got like some people who are like, Cedar Putty's like, the conspiracy, this, that, and the other thing. And then other people are like, he's like a part of the conspiracy. Yeah. How do we not do the Salem witch trials and at the same
Okay.
time become resistant to infiltration?
Where are the Vedas kept? What is the sanctuary of the Vedas?
Speaking of the Brahmanas,
Yeah.
Matsya,
Of
Matsya avatar.
the pure devotees. Not much, No, it's the Brahmanas and the devotees who keep the fidelity of the Vedas in their heart. This is why our parampara comes to us from those who have the adhikar, the proper understanding. So that's the security of it. Those individuals who understand, who have the purity and the realization that Krishna has given them to keep the truth in their hearts. And it's their job, their duty to travel and teach that to others. You know, Prabhupada, he taught us, he said that previously Vedic culture was all around the world. And I was, okay, I accept that, but I was baffled by the American Indians. That how is this Vedic culture? From the little that I knew of their practices, I didn't see it. So I got my realization from that probably around 2010. I was in Kiev, Ukraine, and there's a group of people. They were trying to understand their heritage of Vedic culture. They understood that their heritage is Vedic culture. A little side, just a little side anecdote here. I was talking with one professor there one time, and he asked me. He said, "So, where is Mathura?" And I said, "Oh, about 100 kilometers south of Delhi." He said, "No, we have old maps of Ukraine, and Mathura is in Ukraine." And then he said, "So where is Ayodhya?" And I said, "It's on the coast of India." He said, "No, we have old maps, and in our old maps, Ayodhya is also in Ukraine." So they understood their heritage is Vedic culture. Of course, the Aryan invasion supports their idea. As I would travel around just by car from city to city, you'd go by many villages that would have Sanskrit names. And in fact, Russian language and Sanskrit language, they have more than 2,000 words that are identical both in pronunciation and meaning. So they understood this. So there was this one fellow I went, he is, the devotees told me he's a Brahmin of their, trying to resurrect the idea of their original culture. And so I went to visit him, and he showed me pictures of the different devas, the wind god, sun god, and so on like that. And I asked him, "So do you accept Bhagavad-gita?" And he said, "Yeah, most of it." And then I asked him, "How do you perform your sacrifice?" And he said, "What we do is we take a tree and we carve the images of the devas on a tree. And then we stand those trees up. And then we make a big fire. And we dance around it, chanting shlokas and pouring oblations into the fire." Well, from this, I immediately saw the American Indians with what we call in America the totem pole, right? It was their same thing. Their way of understanding the devas and how they would worship them was different. Now, I expect that in the future, Vedic culture is going to manifest in different ways according to whoever the leaders are there and what they are teaching. So if there are some brahmanas who are traveling and actually imparting the instructions, the whole concept of Vaishnava Dharma, Vaishnava theology, Vaishnava practices, it can come very close to Varnashram Dharma. On the other hand, it may not. But that's up to Krishna, how that's going to go. Our duty is to understand, to become pure, to realize as much as possible, and then when the circumstances require, to travel and teach others what is proper dharma and how to live in this world. As far as the unwanted elements, when we are freed from the constraints of the dominant culture, we'll be able to deal with those things more directly. Do you understand my meaning?
Sounds very ominous.
Well, Kshatriyas carry a sword for a reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't for show. They used it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking.
They had to protect dharma and eradicate adharma.
Yeah.
That was their duty. And we'll be in that position again.
Yeah, there's incontrovertible statements from Srila Prabhupada about the future in that respect. You know, for the people living, you know, in the land, and then you have these brahmanas, as you're saying, traveling around. You know, if you're there and this guy just shows up, you know, and he's a spiritual intellectual, fully convinced, no kind of like, well, we believe in our tradition. No, he just shows up and says, hey, this is reality. Like that relationship to the Veda. Not like, well, you know, there are many beliefs and many religions in the world, and one of them, and some people believe this, and like we believe this thing, not that kind of apologetic, but like a guy who's like wandering around on the surface of the earth, experiencing directly being sustained by the invisible but all-pervading great spirit, Vishnu, who's all pervading the source of all living entities, rolls up into your little whatever tribe or whatever, and then teaches you, you know, the worship of the Supreme Person, then you're going to take him pretty seriously.
Well, let me put it like this. Bring this back to spiritual economics for a little bit. If I wave my magic wand again and eliminate money, what happens? All the artificial way of life disappears immediately, and everything becomes eminently practical, right? Who can solve the immediate problem? That's the person that's going to get respect. And who can solve the larger problems of society? They'll be accepted as the leader, the brahmana, the lawgiver, if they understand the law properly. So the demons have created an artificial way of life using money with their artificial rules and their statutes and their artificial law and so on, not natural law, etc. And the whole thing is based on money. When money disappears, women can have beautiful nails and 3-inch high heels, but that's going to go out the window because, listen, you got to get out there and plant the seeds. And it doesn't matter if your nails are going to break or not. You want to eat? Yeah, grow food, right? And your 3-inch heels aren't going to work very well in the garden. Sorry. Right? Practical, eminently practical without money. It comes down, it immediately reverts to natural living. And that's why Prabhupada says, this is an artificial way of life. It's completely artificial because there's this thing called money in which you could pay people and control their behavior and their actions and their work. Eliminate that and you eliminate artificial society.
Yeah, there's the whole thing
Totally.
there, isn't there? There's like convenience comes in, the possibility of specialization, and then as you point out, the increase in the artificiality of life, but then also it's a system of control, and that's the trade-off. And depending on how you look at it, if you look at it as a consumer of the system, then you get sold on the benefits. Hey, you know, you can get the cool TV or you can get the house or whatever. If you look at it as a producer of the system, it's like you can consolidate control and wealth using this thing. So that's the trade-off there.
Yeah, I've been preaching about Varnashram Dharma for a long time. Spiritual economics actually leads directly to Varnashram Dharma. In terms of how do we live, okay? And what I found is that nobody wants to live on the land because they have a choice, right? And when you've got a choice, you generally are going to take the easiest option. The other thing is, particularly the ladies who are concerned about the children, you go to live on the land, and if your wife is not 100% behind you, it's not going to last because she's concerned with my children, who's going to educate them, what's their future going to be, etc., etc., etc. So Karl Marx said, and I don't agree with practically anything he said, but he said one smart thing. He said, no revolution has ever been successful without the participation of the women. So that's a fact. And if we look at the more indigenous, not indigenous, let's say the more land-based societies around the world, if you go to Africa or the villages of India, the women, their roles are very, very important in terms of growing the food, in terms of taking care of the children, and so on, like that. All the artificial stuff completely gone, and people do what they can do. What can you do, right? What are you able to contribute to the group? That's your value in such a culture. Another great book for that is Glimpses of Traditional Indian Life by Bhaktivedanta Swami. Very good book, because that's based on his experience living in Bengal for his early years in Krishna consciousness, and how the Bengalis lived, because they had a subsistence culture. And how does a subsistence culture work? It works by everybody taking care of everybody else. Your value to the group is your contribution. That is your security in the world, not money. You don't have money. So your security is, what can you contribute? And you're valued accordingly. And if you get out of line, because you are a valued person, you get out of line, there's a lot of people are going to correct you, right? They want, like, if I'm depending on you and you're depending on me, I want you to be moral, honest, hardworking, thrifty. I want you to have all good qualities, and you want the same from me. So, but in modern society, right, because we depend on money, the person next door, we don't even know them, right? They can go to hell. We don't care. We don't even know, right, what they're doing. So this is the Nirvishesha Shunyavadi, the voidism and impersonalism that Srila Prabhupada writes about, of modern society. Again, created by money, right? Without money, all that goes away, and I get to know my neighbor real quick, because I need his help and he needs my help.
That necessity is going to force people to actually do things with their life, hands-on.
And since it requires a collapse of modern Western civilization to bring this in, and we know that we win on this planet in the near future, that means that modern Western civilization is about to collapse. And when you empirically look at it, you can see it. It as you pointed, and this here's Karl Marx for you right here. Not only capitalism, but Asuric demonic civilization contains within it the seeds of its own destruction, because it contains inherent internal contradictions which make it unsustainable.
Or to bring it back to Bhagavad-gita, it's Rajagun and Tamagun.
The mode of passion deteriorates to ignorance.
And what's the result of Tamagun? Destruction. It cannot last, because it's Tamagun. Right? Yeah. The only thing that maintains everything is sattva, and for sattva you have to be on the land. So all this modern, all these great big buildings and all this, great empires, it's impossible for them to last. Again, simply because of, if you understand the gunas, you understand it's impossible. You cannot maintain a civilization in rajas. Period.
Oh, awesome. Here's Purimanta's giving you a shout out. He says, great to hear and see you again, Dhanesvara. I have to go, but it's been an inspiring discussion.
Hare Krishna.
Jai,
nice to see that you were there. Hope to see you again real soon.
And I guess that's the push for all of these Grihastha families, just get out of the cities, like Srila Prabhupada said, get out of the cities, go to buy your own land or group with other people that are in the same mindset, and get your children, your wife safe. And for all the females, Mataji, I don't like the term Matachis. For all the ladies, for all the Devis.
Devis, yeah, there you go.
Stop worrying about your nails and your saris and makeup. You know what? Let's be real. Without your makeup, your beautiful saris or whatever, it's not gonna give you your safety. Get out there, help your husband, protect your children, get out of the cities, go to the land, create a group where your children is going to be safe.
Yeah, we're in the real Noah's Ark building phase right now. You know,
Yeah.
people like, oh,
That's right.
ha, you know, but after 50 years of building the Ark, it's like, who's laughing now? And that's where we are right now.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. And, you know, we have to help people understand what is coming, right? Again,
Mm.
understanding the gunas, we can understand the future. What Prabhupada said in 1973, this civilization is not going to last more than 50 years, right?
Mhm.
There we go.
How did he understand? Because he understands the gunas. He could see
Yeah.
modern civilization, what it is. It cannot last, okay? And already he was seeing in the 60s, right, the signs of beginning of the degradation with the birth control pill, the sexual freedom that was just beginning at that time, what to speak of what's going on now. You see the future, right? It's not difficult to understand. So we have an obligation to help people understand what's coming. And we need to do this on this particular show, Vaishnava Voices.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, it's you know, when you paint it the picture that way, Prabhu, these lenses of analysis, like the divine and the demoniac natures, you know, it's like, oh, did this happen or what? It's all confusing, but it's like you place that lens on it and you're like, of course. And then when you place the lens of the three modes of material nature, Shastra Chakshus, right? Seeing the world through the analytical lens of the Sankhya's, or the distinctions, the categories that are given in the Shastra, people are like, oh, nobody can predict the future. And it's like, yes, you can. The mode of passion degrades into the mode of ignorance, and that causes destruction. Lord Shiva becomes manifest. And then the cycle, you know, the opportunity is there for the cycle to start again, just like when a forest is burned down by a forest fire, and then out of the ashes springs new growth from the seeds. And that's, and you know, hashtag you are here, like right before this forest fire burns this whole thing to the ground. And when you look around, you can see it. Like you mentioned, the birth control pill in the 60s, you know, that's the beginning there. That's mode of passion as anything, isn't it? It's like, I want the nectar without the poison of responsibility. And then people got to enjoy that for some period of time. And now we're in just like this world of madness with people, you know, chopping up their bodies and like just craziness and birth population collapse, you know? And so all this control, on the one hand, the control measures of the CBDCs and everything, it's from this artificially constantly expanding economies with this inflation and the mass consolidation. But the demons' attempt to consolidate wealth and control to themselves causes the inflation of the economy, which then leads to these overextended, over-leveraged economies that we have now, and this inevitable economic collapse. And then, you know, the CBDCs is an attempt not only to institute greater levels of control, but to deal with the impending collapse of the economy. And then they're like, what's going to happen to all the people with no jobs? Let's you know, cull the population.
Yeah, what will the people do with artificial intelligence and robotics, right? What 30% of the jobs are going to be gone in the next 5 years. However, 30% of the workers are already gone due to the reactions of the jabs. One person who's following the statistics has shown that in the United States, 30% of the workforce has applied for disability benefits. They cannot go to work every day because of the reactions from the vaccine.
Well, that's because, of course, Prabhu, that's because of long COVID, for the benefit of the fact checkers and the YouTube censors.
Either way,
otherwise,
doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter.
Otherwise, well, it does, because otherwise this video will get taken down. They'll put a strike on the channel. Like,
Okay.
that's the environment we're in. So I'm just saying, I want to be
All right,
clear
yeah,
that we believe
Better
we
go back
believe
and
the
bleep that out.
science, and it's long COVID that's doing this, of course. You know, the World Health Organization is the single source of truth for all health matters. There's the disclaimer right there. Please consult your physician for what's appropriate for you, and take everything he says as the absolute truth. Yeah.
Okay. What was I going to say after that? Oh yeah, the economy is one thing. The other thing we have is in question is World War III. United States is going to push Russia into World War III. They're hell bent on
China.
doing that.
And China.
Yeah, we'll see where that goes, but at least with Russia, because they want global hegemony. They want, to control the world and do it their way. And anybody doesn't agree, like Syria, like Libya, et cetera, we're going to make your day, right? And like Ukraine, of course, they're just destroying that country for to poke Russia. But that is going to come also, and you don't really need a crystal ball to see that.
Probably the fracturing of the United States as well into separate balkanized countries.
Like the Christians say, we're in end times, right? They believe the end times of the Bible, and it's going to become severe. Who is able to continue in this world? My thesis is that everybody's being tested right now, and those who can pass the test are qualified to be able to remain on the planet to sprout the spiritual culture. Not saying I'm absolutely correct, but that's kind of the way I see it.
Yeah, we do seem to be going through a very intense filtration process. Like, it's a series of tests.
Yeah.
Like, are you going to go out and chant, or are you going to, write a policy banning people from chanting? Even what we see happening in India right now with the Vivekananda kind of thing that's happening. It's like,
oh, I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, Mogalila, a popular preacher, came out and criticized Vivekananda for eating fish.
Yeah.
And then he was subsequently banned for 1 month and sent to Govardhan and made to make a public apology and apologize for it. And, they did press releases and came out on the radio and stuff saying, we don't want to hurt the sentiments of religious, devotees of Vivekananda, and different spiritual paths have different like a whole kind of backpedaling thing on it. And then the next thing that happens is some opinion column comes out in India, and they've just gone into the database and said, well, the founder of the movement, Srila Prabhupada, spoke even more strongly. He called him a rascal. And that's how they started the article. And then the rest of the article is apologetics for Vivekananda. But of course, everyone who backpedaled in the first instance now has nowhere to stand. So
That's
these guys
right.
are pointing out that these guys are not even backing their own founder.
They don't believe their philosophy.
Yeah, exactly. They're not even following their own thing.
They're so weak, they don't follow anything. They're just, do what's expedient. It's disgusting. And all of us have been able to see that all along anyway. So it's not leadership. There's no leadership there, right? No. They don't have any principle. They just do whatever's expedient.
Man. Pick up your cross and follow me, there's no better destiny than to meet with destruction in the service of the Lord. And better to meet with destruction in the course of fulfilling one's own duty.
Amen.
That's like straight Bhagavad-gita, it's like a basic ABCs of spiritual life.
Who do you want to please? Right? Guru and Krishna, or some other authority? That's the real question. And that's what's showing up in all of these challenges with the leadership of ISKCON. We see they want to please the secular authorities. They don't want to please Guru and Krishna.
No. Not at all.
So what's their future going to be? So, and those with a brain can see that. And then what do? Your only recourse is to vote with your feet. Okay, you stop associating with them. But we need to come together, band together, and support each other.
Yeah, we kind of got for for those of us who went down to the Parliament and chanted there, and there's another movie coming out, River of Freedom, next month. So like it just keeps delivering the goods. But you know, we got like publicly denounced, you know, by name in the paper. So it was kind of more like they were like, we don't want to associate with you, or we don't want you to be associated with us.
Right. So
So-
where does that put them? You know,
It puts them offside as far as I'm concerned.
they don't even, you know, follow their own philosophy. So
Exactly.
anyway, like I said, it's a time of trial for everybody, right? Everybody's being called on to make their choice. Where are you going to stand? You know, on
Mhm.
principle, right? On principle of Shastra or on expediency.
And you know, that gift economy that you've been talking about, we had experience of that in the Freedom Village down there. And it was, in a sense, kind of like I every day I would say to people, like, you know, welcome to another day in the preview of the post-apocalyptic paradise. Because that's
Yeah.
really what it felt like. And I was like,
Yeah.
dude, like, this is the future of this country.
Right.
And
exactly that.
material desire went down.
Mm.
Exactly. Exactly. Now,
Yeah.
Booty was telling me about that at the time. And I told him, go around and get names that, you know, contact information for all these people, because this is your tribe, right? These
Yeah.
are the people that you want, because you're going to bring them together afterwards and say, we can live like that now. We don't have to wait, right? Now,
Mhm.
I
what
don't
Booty
think those
do?
people are our tribe, though. I
Well,
think
hang
this
on.
is my sense
Let me-
of it
let me-
when we
let-
were there.
Let me tell you what happened. I mean, there could be, right? Vanashram Dharma is all inclusive. So Booty did that. He got a bunch of names and addresses, and not long afterwards, when he got up back to Northland, he called for a meeting to talk about, you know, where are we going to go from here? And more than 100 people attended, right?
Mhm.
So it was great. It looked like, you know, good success. We're on the roll here. As soon as the government dropped all the mandates and Booty called for another meeting, a handful of people showed up.
Yeah. So I don't think those people are our tribe. I think those people are the tribal leaders of this country's future. Because when the environmental circumstances transform again, like the collapse of everything, those people have lived it. And that was what we were in it was like a Taliban insurgency training camp in the mountains, you know? And I was like, dude, I was there and I was like, bro, if I was a demon on the other side, there is absolutely no way I would allow all these people to come together from across the country in one place for 3 weeks like this together and then leave. I would drop napalm on them all at the same time while they're here. Because metastasizing this across the country, dude, this is like literally the leadership of the future of this country as the whole thing unravels. So I think that's more the tribal leaders, and that the tribes will coalesce around those people, because they're everywhere.
Okay,
now.
but we have an important part we have the glue to give them.
Mm.
Yeah.
They've got the idea, they have the experience, but what's the glue that holds it together? What's the philosophy that you live by? And that's our contribution to it.
Yeah. It was the chanting of the holy names at the center of the whole thing, and that I really experienced it there. It became the center of the village, and you know, we had a temple that had no walls, so it was just open on 4 sides, and then there was a precinct where the Parliament Gardens had a wall around it, and then inside that precinct there was no alcohol, no drugs, and then no alcohol, no drugs there. We were distributing prasadam in there, and we had the kirtan. And then outside the precinct walls in what we called the suburbs, which were the surrounding streets, as you went further out, then people were drinking alcohol. You know, in the center, there were rumors of people drinking alcohol on the outer parts of the town. And I was like, this is incredible. This is like the description of a Vedic city layout here.
Yeah. Wonderful.
But we didn't have food production, and we weren't, you know, on the land. Oh, we did.
But you had food.
The community garden.
You had food, and you had prasadam distribution. So,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, you can't have everything on 2 acres. So, anyway, it was wonderful. I wish I would have been able to be there. I would have loved it.
It could have been amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was powerful, amazing, very connecting with people.
Hmm.
That's where we met. And then for myself personally, on my character arc, you know, I went there, did that, and then the next minute I'm living in a tent on, you know, two hectares of land, 5 acres, you know, and then there's like 4 cows, and I'm like, dude, what has happened to my life? Like, this has propelled me into some alternate parallel reality, you know, different timeline. That's from being an inner city preacher for the first, you know, 45 plus years of my life.
Well,
now
I
I'm
think
like in the country.
you're well situated to use that facility for teaching.
Mm-hmm.
That's your role. You know, you have to teach, and particularly, you know, I think you're on the Varnashram seminar that Vaninath Vasu was doing,
Yes.
and before I knew he was doing that, I was also thinking about, you know, we have to train Kshatriyas. Nobody's doing that, and I made up a curriculum for that. Because that's the most important element. You want to have Varnashram Dharma, you have to have Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. Okay, well, we got the Brahmana part. We should also do a training program for them, particularly for Varnashram culture. And then, we have to find those men who
We do.
have that spirit.
We do.
On the subject of the Brahmanas, you know, like memorizing Shastra and all those kind of things, that's not really the thing that makes a Brahmana.
No.
And this is you know, it's the economic aspect, how he actually gets his livelihood. And of course, in the Manu Samhita, it says that in times of emergency, Brahmanas can take, you know, these different occupations, but he can actually never take the occupation of a Shudra. He can take the occupation of a farmer as long as he doesn't do like the tilling of the soil, which kills the living entities. Now, if we take these as principles, what we have today is everybody's like, oh, you know, but we don't have Varnashram, and then we don't live in a Varnashram society, and then the subtext of that is, and we have no interest in establishing that, like we're not moving towards it.
Not that we're too dependent on the dominant culture. We have not established a way for economic independence. Meaning, I'll give you an example. Our farms in America. Okay, New Vrindavan and Gitanagari. They both had a lot of money, millions of dollars have gone through those farms, but they did not have the vision of using that money to create the infrastructure for independent living. And consequently, the money came and went, and they're both nowhere. New Vrindavan, they're not growing anything.
How sad.
So, and New Taliban's not much different. You know, the other ones, you know, there's no understanding for doing this. So, where was I going with that?
Money, Vrindavan.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we have to create the economic alternative, right? We have to show, you know, how to live from the land. And this is what, if you study that book, speaking about Varnashram, this is what Prabhupada is emphasizing over and over again, right? You live from the land and you grow food. You don't sell it in the market. You don't grow food for money. You grow food for subsistence living. So again, you know, to get anyone to follow that, to do that, they have choices right now, and they're going to take the easy way out. So the leadership, those who are looking ahead and can understand what's coming, need to get ready and prepare for the time when everything collapses. And then you can step up and say, we know what to do. Come here. We're going to organize you accordingly. Right.
They really have faith in the United Nations and in the future of material civilization. Like, in spite of the inherent contradictions that it contains within it, based on the analysis of the 3 modes of material nature, in spite of Srila Prabhupada's statements about it, in spite that an empirical analysis of it to any kind of depth, if you're analytical at all, and then triangulating that with Srila Prabhupada's statements and an analysis on the three modes reveals that its destruction, self-destruction, is inevitable and it's happening right now. And still,
Sudras cannot understand that.
Yep.
Okay, Sudras, they place their trust in authority. Okay, in Vedic culture, they place their trust in the Dvijas, who, because it's a sattvic culture, they take care of them. Okay, in modern society, the leadership wants to exploit them. They give them just enough to survive, but they don't know how to go anywhere else for shelter. It's beyond them. They can't separate that authority from any. They can't see another authority, so
Yeah.
they have no alternative. And
Mm.
you know, who can understand the difference? Who can understand what the UN is up to? All the conspirators, they're the Dvijas. They're the people who do research, who read, who know history, and connect the dots. Not the other people. They
Mm.
can't do it.
It's actually even, there's an even worse exploitation that takes place within ISKCON, if you will, in that in the outside society, there are things like 401k or Kiwi Saver or superannuation, where you work, you get paid, and some money goes into a fund for your future. Whereas, you know, you said about Gita Nagar and Vrindavan collecting millions of dollars. You have these Shudras, people acting as Shudras, providing, you know, the working and providing the funds into this thing. But the managers of that are not creating something for the future to sustain those people, to protect the praja, you know, their dependents. They're
Yeah.
like, we either have to put the money away for them as if we were doing a 401k if we're going to pretend to be part of the system, or we have to be building, you know, like land and a future for them to live into. But neither of those have been created.
Everything depends on vision, right? What is the
Yep.
vision? And
Mm.
what's the saying? Without vision, the people perish. So, what are we doing? And more particularly, why? Why are we doing what we're doing? So, understanding again the gunas, Bhagavad-gita, we understand the why that we would live an independent life on the land, despite the fact that we don't get all the perks, all the sense gratification, and it's much harder. Why are we doing it? Because it's what we need for our own personal spiritual development and for the development of a proper society.
Yeah, you know, the analysis of the modes, I have to keep telling myself about that, because the reality is, this is just from personal experience now of the last year and a half, that the mode of goodness, happiness in the mode of goodness, is poison in the beginning and it's nectar at the end. And like,
Yeah,
this
you're
is
experiencing that on your 2 hectares of land.
oh yeah, this is hard.
Him.
No, come on, honey. you know, not having like, you know, it's like gone from, you know, being able to take a shower at a moment's notice whenever you want, multiple times a day, to like that. You know, I was just like, Prabhupada said simple living, high thinking, but like, you know, when all the time you're just like worrying, you know, you're thinking about how to have a bath or go to the toilet, it's like, what happened to the high thinking? Like, this is just hard. Yeah.
It's called the pioneering stage, right? Just like we can all go out and drive on an asphalt road or a cement road, and it's very nice, but they weren't always there, and somebody did that hard work to put it there for us. We have a debt of gratitude to all of our forebears for who created this civilization, which is so pleasant to live in.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
we have to do the
So pleasant to live in
pioneering.
that people are depressed and killing themselves, right?
Well, we have to do the pioneering work for a proper spiritual culture. Yeah, it's difficult, right? And not everybody wants to be a pioneer.
Yeah. There is a Kiwi culture and Inca culture, completely two different cultures. There we go.
We have to
We are
arrange
after
the time to
building.
talk about the Inca culture. I want to discuss that with you.
That would be awesome.
So we're coming up to the 3-hour mark. We got like 15 minutes before we
Really?
hit that.
Oh
Are
my
there
gosh.
other? Yeah. Are there any other main kind of top level plot points that you wanted to cover?
Okay, the main thing to understand is economics is not just money. We've covered that point several times. Okay,
Mhm.
economics is how we live, and there's different ways to live according to the different gunas. So the economics of sattva gun is to live directly on the land, depending on the Lord, depending on nature, doing our part, depending on cow. Mother cow is such an animal, she forces us to come to sattva gun simply by associating with that animal. You have experience now, right? If you're late for milking, she's going like, where are you? Right? She's not wearing a watch, but she knows what time it is somehow or other, right? And so, we have to understand where are we going, and then how are we going to get there. If we think we can get to Vaikuntha from modern civilization, sorry, it ain't going to work. No, not going to work unless you're living in a temple, supported by a bunch of other people who are out working and sacrificing their lives. I've worked in factories when I was a young man. I know what hellish work that is. And when I was doing that, I'd look around at all these other men who had been doing that for 20 and 30 years. And I'm thinking to myself, how can they do this? And that was my motivation to stay in college, right? It's hellish. It destroys people. We get a nice new car, we think, oh, this is great. But we don't know what suffering people went through to provide all that material, to assemble it, to get the oil out of the ground. It's hellish, right? So we have to see beyond the immediate thing, right? You don't see the body, you see the soul inside. You don't look at this modern civilization and just see the shiny car. You have to see what is the excavation, where the materials, all the suffering that's gone into making these things. And if you haven't had factory experience, if you just worked in an office all your life, maybe you think it's, just like working in an office, but it ain't, right? It's hellish. I worked in the Ford Motor Company iron foundry. It was like going to hell every day, right? Dark, hot, fires, molten metal, smoke. But men go there and they spend their whole lives doing that. And what happens to them? They become destroyed. So this is what society pays to give us a nice shiny car. So this is a civilization in Rajagun, right? Nectar in the beginning, poison at the end. And we're seeing a lot of that poison right now. So we must understand the gunas, how the gunas are working, what the result of the gunas are, and live accordingly. And that means economics. Economics means how do we live? How are we going to learn to live in sattva gun? And that should be the goal. That should be the objective of society. Come to sattva.
Great. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for your time today. Let's go to concluding remarks.
Pleasure to
reflections.
talk to you.
Yeah, I'll go first, then you, and then we'll go back to Prabhu. Okay, so today, what I really got clear on in this conversation is that we're not simply in a late stage capitalist, global capitalist economy. When you look at it through the lens of the modes, we're in a late stage rajas going into tamas economy. And Marx would say that capitalism has within it its own inherent internal contradictions that lead to its destruction. And you can analyze it through that way, but you can see that a Rajasic economy contains within it inherent contradictions which lead to its inevitable destruction as it deteriorates into Tamagun. And that's what we're seeing happening around us right now. That's the conspiracy of the three modes that's taking place. And the opening here is that after that forest fire burns through the world, it's going to leave these fertile ashes there where these new seeds are going to spring up. And that's the Sattvagun. That's the golden age of the next 10,000 years. And it's Vedic civilization, Varnashram. What does it take to be able to create that in the midst of this? Nothing less than the destruction of modern Western civilization. And that's happening by nature's own way. It's a historical inevitability, and we're here for it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Not to scare anyone.
No. I mean, that's the good news.
Yeah, some people don't function well when the truth is told straight to the point. They freak out.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, you have to hear the truth. We're not in a situation where you can just do whatever you want and waste your time, waste your life, and not even have a purpose in life. And I guess minimum, we can put more attention to the people that are teaching us about what's coming, and get into groups that will help you out to come out of that rabbit hole, like most people call it, difficulties, in better life that is more in the mode of goodness. And I appreciate that you are sharing your knowledge and also, giving the warning to people out there. And I hope they don't just listen and then the message goes the other side of the ears. Actually, they are become proactive and also share with like-minded devotees, because that's what we need. We need to clump each other to make it happen. So otherwise, it's not going to happen. Yeah. So that's me.
We're here at this particular time and place for a very specific reason, because we have work to do. We have the blessing, we have the great honor to sow the seeds of a spiritual culture in this world. And, it's no accident that we have 20, 30, 40, 50 years of devotional service behind us. And this is meant to be used for the benefit of others. And we have to take up that endeavor, even though few people may be listening, but you keep telling the truth often enough and people will start believing it. So thank you for doing this podcast. There's so many subject matters that need to be discussed for the benefit of society, and this is the medium to do it. So thank you both for your efforts in this regard. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. And thank you to the viewers today, everyone who's tuned in and commented. Buddy, Mark Corbin, Aroha, Stoker Krishna, Muchakunda, Michael McNeish, everyone else who is watching in the future. Continue to leave your comments, keep the conversation alive, and we will be back with future episodes, including a very deep dive into the rabbit hole of conspirituality as we dive into the Divine or Demoniac book, Dhanesvara Prabhu's other tome, probably the #1 conspirituality book in the space. Thank you so much for coming on, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Haribol. Jai, we're going to roll the credits now. How do I roll the credits? I go here, and then we're going to roll the credits with this. Oh, and before we do that, shout outs to Gora Prabhu and Prajumna Prabhu, who provided the Kirtan soundtrack for the opening and closing credits.
Jai.
Okay.
Okay. Take 4.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare